and welcome to the Dissing My Ability podcast. I am your host, Ken Meeker. I'm the owner of Vitality Career Coaching, a certified professional coach, and something that is going to be very relevant to this episode, I'm a certified ADA coordinator. What I want to talk about on this episode is something a little different than what you would normally hear on the Dissing My Ability podcast. As most Americans probably already know, there is an important election coming up in November of 2024. And I struggled a bit before ultimately deciding that there's just too much at stake this election cycle, not just for me personally, but for anyone who lives with a disability. But I also hope that just anyone who listens to this, able-bodied or not, really takes into account the subject matter of this episode and listens to, because anybody can become disabled at any time. Just because you're able-bodied today doesn't mean you're going to be able-bodied tomorrow. So anyone at any time can become disabled. Disability truly is indiscriminate. So the outcome of this election in November is important because it will affect the policies, rules, regulations, laws, and such that people living with disability rely on for their healthcare, livelihood, and so much more. Something that I've noticed is that there's not really a whole lot of media coverage or anyone really discussing the specific issue of disability and how the two major parties in the United States, what their policies and ideology are with regard to disability specifically. And so I'm going to take an opportunity to do that now on this podcast, because I think it's really important to understand the contrast between the two major parties in the United States. First and foremost, I'm not here to suggest, advise, or say how anyone should vote. I trust people are wise enough to make up their own minds and to vote in a manner that aligns with their personal values and what aligns with what they care about personally. And in the interest of being, fully transparent and, full disclosure here, in the state that I live in Arizona, I'm what's considered an unaffiliated voter, which means I don't align or affiliate with either party, any party, in fact. And in Arizona, unaffiliated is different from being an independent voter. So in preparation for this episode, I really went in and did my research. I learned a few things that I didn't know about, and I have my sources down in the notes of this episode, so you can go check them out for yourself. I encourage you to, and learn this information for yourselves. And so what follows are summaries of the two major party platforms as it relates to disability. This is going to cover things such as healthcare, Social Security benefits, some employment policies, some things around discrimination. Let's dive in. First, we're going to go over the Democratic Party platform with regard to healthcare and the ADA. So the Democrat platform emphasizes the protection and expansion of disability rights. They support full implementation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as the ADA, and other civil rights laws to ensure non-discrimination and equal opportunities for people with disabilities. They advocate for increased funding and resources for the enforcement of these laws and for the Office of Disability Employment Policy, also known as ODEP. This contrasts slightly from the Republican Party, which recognizes the importance of disability rights and supports the enforcement of the ADA. However, the Republican Party tends to focus on reducing regulatory burdens and promoting flexibility with the implementation of disability laws. Republicans emphasize the role of private sector solutions and local control in addressing disability issues. Now on to healthcare. The Democratic Party supports comprehensive health care coverage that includes mental health services and long-term care for people with disabilities. Their platform wants to expand on the Affordable Care Act, sometimes also referred to as Obamacare, and they emphasize comprehensive healthcare coverage that includes mental health, long-term care, and preventative services. They support the Affordable Care Act and seek to build on its provisions to ensure that people living with disabilities have access to affordable health care. The Democratic Party also advocates for expanding Medicaid in all states to cover more low-income individuals with disabilities. They oppose block grants or per capita caps that could limit funding and restrict services. They strongly support protections for individuals with pre-existing conditions, and that ensures people with disabilities cannot be denied coverage or charged higher premiums due to their health status. Comprehensive health care coverage under the Democratic platform can ensure that individuals with disabilities have access to necessary medical services, mental health care, and long-term health care without financial hardship. Medicaid expansion can provide coverage to more low-income individuals with disabilities, according to the Democratic Party platform. Critics of the Democratic Party platform contend that the emphasis on expanding government programs and benefits might create a dependency on these programs, potentially discouraging self-sufficiency and employment for some individuals with disabilities. The Republican Party advocates for reforms to Medicaid, including providing block grants or per capita caps to states, aiming to give states more control over how they use federal funds for disability services. Republicans focus on promoting private health care options and reducing government involvement in healthcare, which they argue will increase efficiency and choice for people with disabilities. The Republican Party platform advocates for increasing the role of private sector healthcare solutions, promoting competition, and reducing government involvement. This includes supporting health savings accounts, or HSAs, and other market-based approaches to healthcare. Republicans focus on reducing regulatory burdens, believing it will lower healthcare costs, which they believe will improve access and affordability for individuals with disabilities. Medicaid reforms proposed by Republicans could lead to variations in coverage and benefits depending upon the state in which somebody lives. This could potentially create disparities in access to services, all based on where someone lives. Increased reliance on private sector solutions might benefit people who can afford private health insurance, but could pose challenges for low-income individuals with disabilities who currently rely on government programs. Additionally, Republicans have made multiple attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act without having a replacement in place for the ACA. This would likely lead to potential denial of coverage due to pre-existing conditions, and this applies not just to permanent disability, but for people that have had a cancer diagnosis, a chronic condition, think of COPD, asthma, autism, or any number of other conditions. Shifting control to states through block grants or per capita caps for Medicaid could result in significant variability in the quality and availability of services across states. Individuals with disabilities might experience disparities in care, all based on where they live. Critics also argue that increased reliance on private sector solutions and market-based approaches might not adequately serve low-income individuals with disabilities. Private insurance can be costly, and out-of-pocket expenses might be prohibitively high for those without substantial financial resources. Efforts to reduce regulatory burdens might weaken protections for individuals with disabilities. This could lead to less stringent enforcement of the ADA and other civil rights laws, potentially increasing discrimination and barriers to access. It's notable that there are a lot of misconceptions about what the Affordable Care Act does and does not do. There's a lot of misinformation about the ACA out there. And so, to give some clarity, I'd like to just go over what the Affordable Care Act does with regard specifically for people with disabilities. It expanded Medicaid eligibility, providing coverage to millions of low-income individuals, including many with disabilities. A repeal of the Affordable Care Act could result in the loss of Medicaid coverage for millions of people with disabilities, reducing their access to essential healthcare services. Medicaid expansion under the ACA is associated with significant improvements in insurance coverage, access to primary and preventative care, and reduction in out-of-pocket spending for adults with disabilities. Repealing the ACA could reverse these gains, leading to increased financial strain and poorer health outcomes. The ACA improved access to health care for individuals with disabilities as well. It reduced uninsurance rates and improved access to necessary medical services. Without the ACA, disparities in access to health care would worsen, particularly for those who rely on public insurance programs. People with disabilities often face higher healthcare costs and barriers to access. The ACA helped reduce some of these barriers, and its repeal could lead to increased difficulties in accessing timely and affordable health care. The ACA also includes critical protections for individuals with pre-existing conditions, ensuring that they cannot be denied coverage or charged higher premiums based on their health status. Repealing these provisions could make it more difficult for people with disabilities to obtain affordable health care insurance. The ACA introduced improvements in long-term services and support for individuals with disabilities, helping them to live independently in their communities. Repeal could roll back these enhancements, increasing reliance on institutional care and reducing the quality of life for many people with disabilities. Now, moving on to another important issue: income and finances. The Democratic Party platform advocates for expanding Social Security Disability Insurance, also known as SSDI, and Supplemental Security Income, known as SSI, to provide better financial support for individuals with disabilities. They aim to simplify the application process and reduce wait times for receiving benefits. They support increasing funding for disability benefit programs to ensure they are adequately resourced to meet the needs of all eligible individuals. Individuals with disabilities may experience improved financial support and stability due to the expansion and increased funding of SSDI and SSI. Simplified application processes can lead to quicker access to benefits. Republicans advocate for reforming SSDI and SSI in an effort to reduce fraud and improve efficiency. They propose measures to ensure that benefits are directed to those most in need while reducing bureaucratic overhead. They emphasize the importance of employment and self-sufficiency, supporting initiatives that encourage private sector employment and reduce dependency on government programs. The focus on reform and efficiency might streamline benefit delivery, but it could also lead to stricter eligibility criteria and potential reductions in benefits for some individuals. The Republican Party platform emphasizes policies that encourage self-sufficiency and to reduce dependency on government programs. This includes promoting work incentives and vocational training for individuals with disabilities. The emphasis on self-sufficiency may benefit those capable of entering the workforce, but it also might pose challenges for those with significant disabilities. The Republican focus on reducing government spending and reforming programs might lead to cuts in disability benefits and services. This could negatively affect individuals who rely heavily on government support for their daily needs. The Republican platform's focus on self-sufficiency and employment might place undue pressure on individuals with significant disabilities who are unable to work. Policies aimed at reducing dependency might overlook the needs of those who genuinely cannot participate in the workforce. It's worth noting that the best estimates on the percentage of total benefits lost to fraud and improper payments is estimated to be about 1 to 2% of the total benefits paid out in both SSI and SSDI programs per year. This is out of a total amount paid in SSI benefits in recent years of around 60 to 70 billion annually, and SSDI benefits of approximately 150 to 160 billion annually. While fraud is a concern, it's important to note that the majority of improper payments in these programs are not due to fraud, but rather to administrative errors, overpayments, or changes in recipients' circumstances that were not reported in a timely manner. People with disabilities are some of the most economically disadvantaged in the United States. Most recent estimates have about 25 to 30% of people with disabilities in the United States living below the poverty line. This rate is nearly twice as high as the poverty rate for people without disabilities. Living in poverty in the United States means an annual income of $14,580 or less per year. That comes out to $1,215 per month at most. No one is getting rich or living an extravagant lifestyle living off of Social Security benefits. As of 2024, the average SSDI payment is about $1,400 per month. For individuals who qualify for SSI, the maximum federal benefit for 2024 is $914 per month for an individual. Some states might provide additional supplemental payments on top of the federal benefit. Individuals with disabilities who are employed tend to earn lower wages on average compared to those without disabilities. The median weekly earnings for full-time workers with disabilities is about $1,000 per month less than those without disabilities. And this reflects disparities in employment and wage levels. So there are significant differences in the two parties' platforms and their visions for America. I believe that it is essential to be an informed voter. When you vote, not if you vote. Go to the ballot with the information you need to vote for what is right for you and your family. It's not for me or anyone else to tell you how to vote. I trust people to make the decision that is correct for themselves. I hope you found this information useful. There are other major issues such as education, accessibility, and other social services that I didn't discuss on this episode, as I didn't want it to run overly long, but I'd be happy to do so, and I encourage you that if you would like me to do so, go over the two major party platforms with regard to other issues. Please leave a comment or you can email me directly. You can shoot me an email at kenmeekeraz@gmail.com, or you can just leave a comment in the notes. I really do appreciate you listening, and I invite you to like, subscribe, and please share. This is the Dissing My Ability podcast. I'm your host, Ken Meeker, and as always, please be kind to others and yourself.